You're watching Watertown Cable News, presented by WCA-TV and sponsored by La Macchia Realty.
Coming up tonight on Watertown Cable News, some big changes at the head of the Watertown Police Department as a longtime chief retires and a new one is appointed. Residents and planning officials spend 3 days considering options for a redesign of Watertown Square. We'll show you some of the mock-ups. The City Council shares some of the budget priorities being considered for the fiscal year 25 budget, and we'll tell you about a unique performance of A Christmas Carol coming to the Macessian Center for the Arts. Those stories and more coming up tonight on Watertown Cable News. Hello and welcome to the November 30th edition of Watertown Cable News. I'm Dan Hogan, reporting to you from a new location this week. Now, finally, at long last, WCA-TV has moved in to our new studio and offices here at 30 Common Street in the Phillips Administration Building. We're still unpacking, have a lot of boxes to go through, have new equipment to set up, so it's going to be a little bit longer till we're back in the studio, but we are now in our new home. We're still close to the public, so don't come and say hi quite yet. We'll have a ribbon cutting at some point and a big celebration to welcome you all to our new studio, but until then, you're still stuck with me in my office with my weird little microphone. Hopefully, sooner rather than later, we get back to having our great volunteer news anchors back in studio. So with that, on to tonight's broadcast, where we start with some big changes in the Watertown Police Department as a longtime Watertown police officer and most recently chief has retired and a new chief has been appointed. Watertown's provisional police chief, Thomas F. Rocca, who has served as the provisional chief since June 4th, 2022, was celebrated during his final roll call on Tuesday, November 28th. Rocca has been a member of the Watertown Police Department for nearly 38 years, first joining as a patrolman on March 3rd, 1986. He was eventually promoted to sergeant, detective sergeant, lieutenant, detective lieutenant, and captain before becoming the provisional chief in 2022. In attendance during Tuesday's ceremony included former chiefs and police officers of the Watertown Police Department, as well as Chief Rocca's friends and family. He was presented with some gifts from the police department, as well as the fire department and recreation department.
I just want to take a moment to thank Chief Rocca for being here, working with me, working with us over the course of the time he has served in this role. I know that it's probably been a little bit longer than anticipated.
He was instrumental in maintaining a very tight budget for our department. He kept us in a good spot for a long, long time, and that's certainly something that we're gonna miss.
You really did establish a well-earned reputation over the course of many years as an honorable, decent man, a man committed to the Watertown Police Department, but most importantly, committed to his family.
It's hard to encapsulate almost 38 years. You feel both sad and happy. Sad that you're leaving the people like this that would create this kind of a video, and you're happy that you get to spend more time with your family and to do other things. I do have a little bit of some simple advice for the officers that are here. One is always maintain your personal integrity, both on and off the job. It's so important, especially in these days going forward. And I just want to say that how overwhelmed I am here with all the support from city officials and from the retirees and from the current police department and family and friends. And I just want to thank everybody. Thank you so much.
The very next day, on Wednesday, November 29th, the City of Watertown announced that City Manager George Proakis has appointed Watertown's new police chief. Watertown native and 28-year veteran of the police department, Justin Hanrahan, will take over as the chief of the Watertown Police Department effective November 30th. Hanrahan was one of 2 captains on the Watertown Police Department who was in consideration for the job. As chief, he will oversee nearly 80 sworn and civilian staff, provide police and emergency response services spanning 4 groups in a department that has an annual operating budget of approximately $11 million. Hanrahan began his law enforcement career as a police officer for the city of Keene, New Hampshire in 1995, and in July 1997, Hanrahan became a police officer with the Watertown Police Department. Most recently, Hanrahan served as the captain of the field operations, which oversees the patrol division, traffic division, and 911 communications center. He also previously served as the commander of the Community and Staff Development Division, where he oversaw the department's community policing and school resource officer programs. He also led the department in its initial accreditation, at which time Watertown was only the 2nd department in Massachusetts to be both certified and accredited. He holds a doctorate degree in law with a focus on criminal law and procedure from the Massachusetts School of Law, along with a Master of Science in Criminal Justice from the University of UMass Lowell. It was also announced that Lieutenant Kenneth Delaney has been promoted to the role of captain on the police department. Well, if you had any insight on how you envision the future of Watertown Square, 64 Pleasant Street was the place to be this week, as the city of Watertown hosted a 3-day in-depth planning charrette where residents were able to meet with designers to create mock-ups of possible ways to redesign Watertown Square. The 3-day event included 2 full-day planning sessions, as well as presentations at the conclusion of each of the events. Walkability guru Jeff Speck, who also spoke during October's kickoff event for the Watertown Square area plan, shared some of his initial designs for how Watertown Square could be improved.
We're calling them the Four Corners scheme, the Delta Bout scheme. We created a new term, Delta Bout. And we call it that because it has a one-way flow, but it has signalized intersections, so it's not functioning like a roundabout in any way. The Four Corners scheme is the most conventional scheme, which sounds bad, I guess, but conventional is what people know how to use, and it has mostly normal intersections. The main thing it does is it simplifies the principal intersection by turning it into just 2 streets that cross each other. We as city planners have an obligation to create new places that look like the places we admire, because you never know how something's going to turn out. So, the number one marching order I have in my work is to find great precedents and to copy them.
The concluding presentation of that 3-day planning charrette, which will include the findings and opinions from all 3 days of planning, is being presented on Thursday night, November 30th. We'll have a more in-depth report from those findings next week on Watertown Cable News. Turning to some news from municipal meetings this week, the Watertown Zoning Board of Appeals on Wednesday night, November 29th, approved a special permit for a 6-story parking garage to be built alongside the Watertown Mall transformation at 480 Arsenal Way in Watertown. Watertown's Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts Troop 30 were also celebrated by the City Council during their meeting on Monday night for collecting over 3 tons of food for the Watertown Food Pantry. Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts on the Saturday before Thanksgiving collected 6,467 pounds of goods from the community. That amounts to a little over 3.2 tons of food. Troop 30 has been recognized in the past for their record-breaking food drives, including in 2021 when they collected over 10,000 pounds of food, and in 2022 when they collected nearly 6,000 pounds of food. The Committee on Budget and Fiscal Oversight also presented the list of budget guidelines that councilors will prioritize that will guide how the city spends money in fiscal year 2025. Among the guidelines that will be ranked include a long-term goal to promote a diversified and growing tax base and a renewed focus on small business, retail corridors, and emerging industry leaders. Additionally, the city wants to continue pursuing mitigation monies, linkage fees, and other measures from large-scale projects, require all departments to actively pursue filing applications for all relevant state, federal, and private foundation grant programs, and actively seek payment in lieu of taxes agreements or other in-kind services with each nonprofit organization owning or purchasing property in Watertown. City Manager George Proakis also provided a first look at some reorganization plans of multiple city departments utilizing the Parker Annex building at 123 Watertown Street. The entire reorganization project will be carried out in 5 different phases. When it's all said and done, Information Technology and the Health Department will join the Department of Public Buildings over at the Parker School, as well as some additional space for city storage. There are also plans for the Watertown Food Pantry to relocate to the Parker School as well in the summer of 2024. And then at City Hall, a number of departments will then switch offices and move around the building in order to maximize what the city manager says is an overcrowding situation at City Hall. A proposed 6th phase to this project could include some major changes to the Watertown Senior Center, as well as the overall site that also contains WCA-TV's new home at the Phillips Administration Building at 30 Common Street. The city manager presented a couple of very early renderings of what that plan could look like, but this particular phase of the plan likely won't come to fruition until after the completion of Watertown High School, which is slated to open in 2026. Speaking of Watertown High School, here's a look at the demolition progress so far as of this week over at the high school. Nearly half of the building is now gone since we took this footage. It's quite an interesting process to watch, so I'd suggest heading over to Columbia Street to watch the process for yourself. For a 3rd season, nationally celebrated voiceover artist Dick Terhune will return to the Missessian Center for the Arts in December to put on a solo stage performance of A Christmas Carol. The versatile actor will play over 30 roles, bringing to life Tiny Tim, Bob Cratchit, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and of course, Ebenezer Scrooge himself. A Christmas Carol will be performed on the main stage of the Missessian Center for the Arts at 321 Arsenal Street on Saturday, December 9th at 8 p.m. and on Sunday, December 10th at 2 p.m. Tickets may be purchased at the box office or online at missessianarts.org. So that wraps it up for news this week in Watertown. Now, WCA-TV's channels and video on demand will be down starting on Friday and continuing until Monday as they do some maintenance on the Phillips building that we're now in. So our VOD and channels will be down for a few days. I'll make sure to get this episode up on our YouTube channel so that you can watch it if you missed the live broadcast on Thursday evening. So thank you so much for watching and continuing to bear with us as we go through some big changes and exciting changes at WCA-TV. So I will see you next Thursday, December 7th, for a new edition of WCN. Good night.